back in 2008, I had just turned 18. For reasons I'd rather not get into, I packed up everything I owned and left home that very same day. For the next 4 years, I lived out of my car. Every morning, I'd work as a barista from 6 until 2, then head straight to my second job as a line cook from 4 until 10 at night. Every dollar I earned went toward one goal: saving enough money to finally have a place to call home again. By the time I turned 22, I'd finally done it. I was living in Los Angeles when I found a small 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house in North Hollywood. The rent was unbelievably cheap because it had been sitting empty for over a year and was in rough shape. The wallpaper was peeling, the ceilings were stained with water damage, the kitchen faucet barely worked, and cabinet handles came off in your hand. None of that mattered to me. After spending 4 years sleeping in my car, a house with running water felt like a luxury. The landlord, Anders, gave me a tour before handing over the keys. He was a friendly old man, although it was obvious his memory wasn't what it used to be. During the walkthrough, he accidentally showed me the bathroom and the master bedroom twice, as if he'd forgotten he'd already been there. "It's a good house with good bones," he said as he handed me the keys. "Take good care of it." Just before leaving, he stopped in the doorway and looked past me toward the bathroom. He stood there for a few seconds with his hand resting on his chin. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, it's just something looks different about that bathroom. I can't quite put my finger on it." He shook his head, smiled, and repeated himself. "Ah well, good house, good bones. Take good care of it." Then he left. Over the next few days, I cleaned the place, unpacked my belongings, and slowly settled into my new home. I was so excited to finally have a place of my own that I invited my sister and her fiancé over. It was the first time I'd been able to host anyone in years. After they left that evening, I decided to take a shower. The bathroom didn't have the usual mirror above the sink. Instead, there was a large, full-length mirror mounted beside the vanity, which always seemed like a strange choice for such a small bathroom. When I stepped out of the shower and wiped some of the steam off the glass, I froze. Written in the condensation, right at eye level, was a single word: "Hi." I stared at it for several seconds. It looked intentional, not like a random pattern left by the steam. My sister had used the bathroom before leaving, so I figured maybe she'd written it as a joke and the steam had just revealed it. I even thought about texting her to ask, but the more I imagined sending that message, the more ridiculous it sounded. So I wiped the mirror clean, convinced myself I was overthinking it, and went to bed. I forgot about it for a while. About a month later, I got promoted at one of my jobs. The extra money was great, but it also meant longer hours, which left me spending even more nights alone in the house. I also started hiring contractors to fix the things I couldn't repair myself, so there were strangers coming and going during the day. Every now and then, I'd wake up in the middle of the night because of some noise I couldn't identify. I always convinced myself it was just the house settling. Then, exactly 1 month after finding that first message, I came home from work, took a shower, and pulled the curtain back. Another message had appeared on the mirror. Staying long? One word could have been a coincidence. An entire question wasn't. I immediately checked every door and every window. Everything was locked. I searched every room in the house, but nothing looked out of place. There wasn't a single sign that anyone had been inside. Even so, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. For the next several days, I checked every lock 3 or 4 times before going to bed. I searched every possible hiding spot in that tiny house, yet I never found anything. Eventually, another month passed without anything happening, and I slowly started convincing myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Then, one Friday morning, just after 3 o'clock, I suddenly woke up. I wasn't sure what had disturbed me. The house was completely silent. No creaking. No settling, nothing. Then I turned toward my bedroom door. It was standing wide open. I knew I'd closed it before going to sleep. I stared into the hallway, but the darkness beyond my room was so complete that my eyes refused to adjust. I can't explain why, but I knew. Something was out there, just beyond the doorway, watching me, waiting. Every instinct told me not to step into that hallway. Instead, I forced myself out of bed, walked straight to the door without looking into the darkness any longer than I had to, and slammed it shut. I didn't investigate. I didn't call out. I grabbed my bookcase and dragged it in front of the door. It probably wouldn't stop someone determined to get inside, but at least I'd hear them. The following evening, I was standing in the shower, replaying everything in my head, trying to convince myself there had to be a logical explanation. That's when I heard it. A tiny click. It was so quiet, I almost missed it. I ripped the shower curtain open and grabbed the nearest thing I could use as a weapon, a shampoo bottle. No one was there, but when I looked at the mirror, there was another message. This one was larger than the others. Bolder, impossible to misunderstand. "I see you," something inside me snapped. I wasn't scared anymore. I was angry. I quickly dried off, threw on some clothes, grabbed my phone from the bathroom counter, and never took my eyes off that mirror while I dialed my landlord's number. The phone rang so many times that I almost hung up, figuring it was far too late for an elderly man to still be awake. Finally, Anders answered. His voice sounded sleepy but cheerful. He asked how I was settling into my new home. I didn't bother with small talk. "I need you to tell me if there's any way someone could be getting into this house," I said. "Every night I check every door, every window, every closet, and things are still happening. There has to be another way inside." There was a long pause. "What?" he finally asked, sounding confused. "What's getting in? If you've got rats, let me know. My last tenant had rat problems sometimes." "Yeah, sure, rats." I took a deep breath. Besides the doors and windows, how else could someone get into the house? "Well," he said slowly, thinking out loud. "There's the vents, of course. There used to be a chimney too, but that was sealed years ago. And then there's the crawl space underneath the house, though I imagine you've already found that." I frowned. "No, I haven't." "Really?" he replied. "The entrance should be on the floor of the bathroom closet." I looked around the bathroom. "What bathroom closet?" "The one just to the left of the vanity." I slowly turned toward the oversized mirror, the same mirror that had always felt strangely out of place. Then I remembered what Anders had said on the day I moved in. Something looks different about that bathroom, without saying another word. I set my phone down on the counter and walked toward the mirror. I ran my hands around the edges of the frame, searching for anything unusual. A gap, a latch, anything. Then my fingers caught on a narrow groove hidden behind the trim near the right side. I pulled. The mirror didn't break. It didn't even resist. It swung open silently on hidden hinges. Behind it wasn't a wall. It was a narrow walk-in closet. The bathroom light barely reached the back of it. Anders was still talking through the phone behind me, but I couldn't understand a single word anymore. All I could do was stare. The floor of the closet was covered in trash. Dirty blankets had been piled together into a makeshift bed. Fast food containers were scattered everywhere. Empty drink cans were stacked against the wall. A second later, the smell hit me. Stale, human, like someone had actually been living there. Then I noticed something even worse. Mixed in with all the garbage were my belongings. A sock I'd lost weeks ago. My old toothbrush that had disappeared shortly after I moved in. A comb I'd never been able to find after my first shower. And leaning carefully against the wall was a framed photograph of me, my sister, and our childhood dog. It had been sitting on my nightstand only a few days earlier. Someone had been inside my bedroom while I was asleep. I slowly crouched down to pick up the photograph, my hand shaking so badly I could barely hold it. That's when I heard someone say my name. At first, I thought it was Anders. The sound had come through my phone, but something about the voice was wrong. It was deeper, clearer, and somehow closer. I slowly looked up. At the very back of the closet was a square opening in the floor, the entrance to the crawlspace. And rising out of that opening was a man's head. His hair was long and matted. His eyes were wide open, with pupils so large they were almost completely black, and he was smiling. Not a normal smile. It stretched unnaturally wide across his face, so wide it looked painful. The second I saw him, I ran. I didn't grab anything. I didn't look back. I sprinted straight out of the house, jumped into my car, and didn't stop driving until I reached my sister's place. The next day, the police searched the property. They confirmed there really was a hidden crawl space behind the mirror. Their theory was that a squatter had been living beneath the house during the year it sat vacant. When I moved in, he never left. Instead, he'd created a hidden living space behind the bathroom mirror, sneaking into my house while I slept, taking small personal items and leaving messages that only appeared whenever the mirror fogged up after a shower. Despite an extensive search, they never found him. Not long after that, I moved to the other side of the county. Since then, I've only lived in small studio apartments. No spare rooms, no hidden spaces, no places where someone could disappear without being noticed. Even now, whenever I stay somewhere unfamiliar, the first thing I do is shine a flashlight directly at the bathroom mirror and tap on the glass before I trust it. Because the strangest part of everything didn't happen until I returned to the house one last time with a police officer. We were walking through the property together, documenting the scene. For reasons I still don't understand, I stepped inside that hidden closet again. Then, I slowly pulled the door shut behind me. I turned toward the mirror for one final look. I expected to see the wooden back of the closet door. Instead, I saw the police officer's face, standing on the other side of the mirror, staring directly back at me. It was late November, and my parents had gone out for the evening. They weren't expected back until the early hours of the morning. My younger brother was spending the night at a friend's house, and our nearest neighbors were either away or busy with their own plans. For the first time in a long while, I had the entire house to myself. We lived on the edge of a small town in Ohio. Dense woods bordered one side of our property, while the other opened into wide, empty fields. During the day, it was peaceful. At night, it felt completely isolated. The evening started like any other. I watched TV, made myself some dinner, and spent a few hours playing video games while snow slowly began falling outside. Everything felt normal until a little after 11. Out of nowhere, I was hit with this strange feeling that something wasn't right. I tried to ignore it. I figured it was just the kind of irrational paranoia that comes from sitting alone in a quiet house for too long. Then I heard it. Smack, smack, smack. 3 loud, deliberate hits against the window directly behind me. They were too heavy to be branches, too sharp to be the wind. Whatever made that sound hit the glass on purpose. My entire body locked up before I even realized what I'd heard. I spun around and threw the blinds open, expecting to see someone standing outside. There was nothing, just fresh snow falling under the porch light and an empty yard that looked completely normal. No branches close enough to reach the window. No animals running away. Nothing. I tried convincing myself it was ice falling off the roof. Maybe something had blown into the house. Anything except what my instincts were already telling me. Someone had been standing outside that window. I moved into our home office and sat down at the computer, hoping to distract myself. For about 30 minutes, it worked. I almost managed to convince myself I'd imagined everything. Then it happened again. Whomp, whomp, whomp. This time it came from the office window. My stomach dropped. This wasn't random. Someone was moving around the outside of the house, testing each window one by one. My hands were shaking so badly that I nearly dropped the flashlight and kitchen knife I grabbed before looking outside. I swept the flashlight across the backyard, then toward the tree line. I kept waiting to see someone move, waiting for a pair of eyes to reflect back at me. Nothing. Then I noticed something in the fresh snow beneath the window. Footprints, not random footprints. A clear trail leading away from the house, straight into the woods. My heart sank. Someone had been standing only a few feet from that window, and I'd never heard them walk up. I immediately called my mom. The moment she heard the panic in my voice, her tone completely changed. She told me to lock every door and every window. If anything happened again, call the police immediately. My parents even offered to come home early. At the time, I still hoped there was some innocent explanation, so I told them not to worry and to enjoy the rest of their evening. I wish I hadn't. After hanging up, I locked every door and window in the house. Then I grabbed my phone, the knife, and the flashlight before heading to my bedroom. I kept telling myself that if I could just get some sleep, everything would seem less terrifying in the morning. To drown out the silence, I put in my earbuds, turned on some music, and lay in bed until I finally started drifting off. Then I heard it again. Whack, whack, whack. This time, it was right outside my bedroom window. I froze. I didn't move. I barely even breathed. When the knocking finally stopped, I immediately called my parents and told them to come home. They arrived just before 3 in the morning. My dad grabbed his handgun, and the three of us searched around the outside of the house together. We never found anyone, but we did find the footprints. They circled the entire house, over and over, stopping beneath every single window that had been hit. Then my dad noticed something else. The side door had been badly damaged. The center of it had been crushed inward, as if someone had repeatedly struck it with something heavy. None of us slept for the rest of the night. As soon as the sun came up, my dad decided to follow the footprints into the woods by himself. I wanted to go with him. He wouldn't let me. Almost 20 minutes later, he finally came back. I'd never seen him look like that before. His face had gone completely pale. Deep in the woods, hidden well enough that most people would have walked right past it, he'd found a small, makeshift shelter. Inside were dozens of photographs of our house. Some had been taken during the day, some at sunset, some at night. Each one showed the house from a different angle, like someone had been watching us for weeks. Lying beside the photographs was a small sledgehammer. Tiny splinters of wood were still stuck to the head of it. The footprints leaving that shelter eventually crossed the open field behind our property and disappeared near a distant road. Whoever had been circling our house that snowy November night, whoever had been testing every window, whoever had tried to force their way through that side door, was never identified. The police never made an arrest. To this day, I still don't know who was out there or what would have happened if my parents hadn't come home when they did. I haven't spent another night alone in a house since. I was 28 years old, working as a freelance graphic designer and living alone in an older apartment building. My apartment was the last unit at the end of a long, quiet hallway. Most of my neighbors were elderly and spent their days away from home, so the building was almost always silent. I actually liked it that way. At least, I used to. It all started on a Tuesday night, sometime around 11:30. I was sitting at my desk, finishing up some work, when I heard a single cough. It didn't come from outside my apartment. It came from inside, specifically from the short hallway leading to my bedroom and bathroom. I immediately got up and checked every room. Nothing. No one. I convinced myself it had to be the old building settling, maybe the plumbing making strange noises. So I went back to work. 2 nights later, I was standing in my kitchen when I heard a voice coming from the living room. Just one word. Yeah, my voice. Exactly the way I say it when I'm distracted or only half paying attention. I checked my phone. No calls. No videos playing. Then I searched the living room. It was empty. I kept telling myself I was just exhausted, that sometimes your brain mistakes random sounds for familiar voices. For a few days, that explanation was enough. Then, just after 1 in the morning, I was lying in bed when I heard it again. This time, it spoke 2 words. Hold on. It wasn't similar to my voice. It was my voice. The exact same tone. The exact same cadence. I couldn't explain it anymore. So I decided to start recording. Every night before going to bed, I'd leave my phone in the living room running a sound-activated recording app while I slept with my bedroom door closed. The first 2 nights captured nothing except the refrigerator humming and the occasional car passing outside. Then, on the 3rd night, I woke up around 3 in the morning to use the bathroom. While I was standing silently at the sink, I heard my own laugh coming from the living room. I hadn't made a sound. I immediately checked the recording. There it was. Time-stamped my laugh, coming from the living room at the exact moment I'd been standing alone in the bathroom without saying a single word. Over the next week, things only got worse. Every morning, the recordings captured more of my own voice, short phrases I'd actually said earlier that day. I'll do it later. No worries. Did I leave the stove on? That's fine. The words were always familiar, but they were stitched together into conversations that had never actually happened. Almost as if someone was practicing. I stopped sleeping properly. I started going to bed earlier, hoping I'd sleep through whatever was happening. It didn't matter. Almost every night, I'd wake up sometime between 2 and 3 in the morning to the sound of my own voice, talking to itself in the next room. Then came the moment that made me realize this wasn't just happening inside my own head. I was on a video call with a client, presenting a design we'd been working on for weeks. I was sharing my screen, walking them through a few revisions, when they suddenly stopped talking. There was a long pause, the kind of pause that makes your stomach sink before you even know why. Finally, they asked, "Is someone else there with you?" I frowned. "No, it's just me." They hesitated before answering. I could have sworn I heard someone talking. "It sounded like you, but your lips weren't moving." Every hair on my body stood up. I asked them exactly what they'd heard. They said it sounded like my voice, quietly saying, "Yeah, that's fine," almost like it had come from somewhere behind me. My bedroom door had been open during the entire call. My back had been facing it the whole time. That was the moment everything changed. Until then, I'd been trying to convince myself I was exhausted, that I was imagining things, but someone else had heard it too. Someone who had no idea what had been happening inside my apartment. The second the call ended, I searched every inch of the place, behind furniture, inside every closet, every air vent, under the bed, behind appliances. Anywhere a speaker or hidden device could have been concealed. Then I checked my Wi-Fi network, ran malware scans on every device I own. Nothing. No hidden cameras, no speakers, no unknown devices, no explanation. That night, I decided to record video instead of just audio. I placed my phone on the kitchen counter, pointed directly toward the living room, and let it record while I went to bed. The next morning, I sat down and watched nearly 8 hours of footage. For the first 5 hours, nothing happened. The room stayed completely empty. Then, at exactly 3:47 a.m., the audio picked something up. My voice. But this time, it wasn't repeating something I'd actually said. It spoke 3 words I'd never heard before. "Are you asleep?" I replayed that clip over and over and over again. The more I listened, the more something started bothering me. It wasn't perfect. Not yet. The rhythm was slightly off, almost like someone had listened to me speak hundreds of times, but was still trying to imitate the way I naturally talked. Then I realized something that made my stomach drop. Each recording had sounded a little more convincing than the last. It wasn't just repeating my voice anymore. It was improving. It was. Learning the final night was the worst. I was lying in bed with my bedroom door closed and every light in the apartment turned off. It was a little after 2 in the morning when I heard footsteps coming from the living room. Slow, deliberate, one step at a time. It wasn't the sound of the building settling. It wasn't an animal. These were unmistakably human footsteps. Whoever or whatever it was wasn't trying to be quiet. It walked across the living room with the confidence of someone who knew I was there. Then the footsteps stopped, right outside my bedroom door. Before I could even react, I heard my own voice whisper through the other side. "I know you're awake." I froze. I didn't move. I barely even breathed. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run, to open the window, to call for help, to do anything. But my body refused to move. I kept staring at the thin gap beneath my bedroom door. The orange glow from the streetlights outside stretched underneath it until suddenly it disappeared. A shadow. 2 feet, standing perfectly still on the other side of the door, waiting. I have no idea how long I stayed there staring at that shadow. It felt like an hour. In reality, it was probably only a few minutes. Eventually, it moved. The footsteps slowly drifted back toward the living room. Then, from farther away, I heard my voice one last time. Quiet, almost casual. Tomorrow, I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The moment the sun came up, I turned on every light in the apartment, called in sick, and spent the entire day trying to convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. I never truly went back to living there after that. Instead, I started moving between hotels and staying with friends whenever I could. I kept telling myself I'd eventually figure out what to do. But the truth is, I still don't know whether leaving even mattered. I don't know if whatever was inside that apartment stayed there, or if it left with me. I still have the final recording saved on my phone. I've listened to it more times than I should have. Every time I do, I notice the same thing. When I first started hearing my voice, it sounded close, but never perfect. Like something was practicing, learning, trying to become me. But the last recording, The one that whispered, "I know you're awake," doesn't sound almost right anymore. It sounds exactly like me. Not close. Not improving. Finished. And somewhere, whether it's still inside that apartment or somewhere else entirely, something that spent months learning my voice, my laugh, my mannerisms, is still waiting for tomorrow.